Ladies and gentlemen, 2025 is not just another year, it's your wake-up call. In a world that's louder than ever, the real strength lies in silence. This year, make it your mission to stop chasing noise and start chasing clarity. Focus on yourself. Build, grow, evolve quietly. When you stop explaining and start executing, the world listens differently. This is your time to rise without shouting, to move without announcing. Master your mind, guard your energy, and remember, silence isn't weakness, it's power under control. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world dominated by noise, constant notifications, opinions, demands, and distractions, silence is seen as weakness, passivity, or even failure. But in reality, silence is one of the most strategic tools a person can possess. It is not the absence of action, but the presence of control. It is not about withdrawing from life, but about intentionally choosing your energy, your focus, and your voice. When used wisely, silence becomes a powerful filter, a sharp edge, and a shield. It becomes a statement, not of retreat, but of authority. Think about the most disciplined individuals you've seen, the ones who are building quietly, mastering their craft, making moves without broadcasting them. These people are not running from the spotlight. They've simply learned they don't need it. They understand that real progress doesn't need to be proven in real time. It's internal, it's personal, and it's deeply powerful. Silence gives them the space to develop themselves without the pressure of performing for others. It protects their process, their peace, and their power. When you stay silent, you're not giving up your voice. You're choosing when and how to use it. That's strategy. In conversations, silence can unsettle. In relationships, it can assert boundaries. In competition, it can create mystery. And within your own mind, silence allows space for clarity. The constant commentary of life can crowd your thoughts, keeping you reactive rather than reflective. But in silence, your mind can breathe. You can hear your own instincts, your own beliefs, your real priorities without the influence of external noise. Silence builds presence. When you walk into a room and speak only when necessary, your words carry weight. You're not trying to dominate the space, you own it. People lean in, not because you're loud, but because you're intentional. There is power in restraint, in not needing to prove, not needing to explain, not needing to announce every step of your journey. That doesn't mean being passive. It means moving with precision. It means you are rooted in your purpose, not pulled by the opinions of others. In a practical sense, silence allows observation. The loudest people often miss the details. They're so busy broadcasting, they stop listening. But the silent ones, they're absorbing, watching the room, reading the energy, spotting the patterns. They are 10 steps ahead because they're not reacting, they're learning. This is strategy. Emotional intelligence isn't just about speaking the right words. It's also about knowing when to say nothing. It's about understanding timing, intention, and presence. And when it comes to personal growth, silence becomes sacred. Growth requires discomfort, introspection, and space. You can't fake growth, and you can't rush it. It doesn't happen in the noise of comparison or the chaos of public validation. It happens in solitude, in the hours when no one is watching, when it's just you, your thoughts, your habits, and your discipline. Silence allows you to be brutally honest with yourself. It holds a mirror up to your insecurities, your blind spots, your patterns. It doesn't judge, it just reflects. And from that reflection, change begins. Silence is also protection. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your emotions, your journey. Speaking too soon can expose your plans to people who don't support them. Sharing too much can invite sabotage, criticism, or even doubt. But when you move in silence, you move in safety. You let your actions speak for you. You let your results do the talking. You maintain control over your direction because you haven't handed it out for public opinion. This kind of silence isn't isolation, it's elevation. There's also the strategic silence in conflict. Not every insult needs a reply. Not every disagreement needs a debate. Sometimes silence is the strongest statement you can make. It tells the world, I know my worth. I don't need to lower myself to respond. It saves you energy, time, and dignity. It keeps you focused on what actually matters. Because when you're focused on personal growth, not every battle is worth fighting. Some things are better left in silence, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. This level of silence takes strength. It requires emotional control, maturity, and self-awareness. It's not easy to stay silent when you're misunderstood. It's not easy to keep building when no one's applauding. It's not easy to be patient when results take time. But that's the point. Silence builds resilience. It trains you to rely on internal validation rather than external approval. It teaches you to stay grounded, to stay centered, and to keep your eyes on your own path, no matter the noise around you. In leadership, silence is one of the most underused tools. A great leader doesn't need to be the loudest in the room. They need to be the clearest. And clarity comes from silence, from listening more than speaking, from observing before acting, from understanding the emotional tone of a situation before responding. Silence in leadership creates space for others to rise. It models calm, patience, and discipline. It creates an environment where wisdom is respected, not just volume. In decision-making, silence helps avoid impulse. It forces you to sit with the discomfort of uncertainty until clarity emerges. It keeps you from chasing quick wins and pushes you to think long-term. Silence before action allows you to align your choices with your values rather than your fears. It slows you down just enough to be deliberate, and in that slowness, you gain momentum. Because rushed decisions often come from external pressure, while powerful decisions decisions come from internal alignment, there's also creative power in silence. Innovation doesn't thrive in chaos, it thrives in space. Writers, artists, thinkers, and creators all understand this. The best ideas don't come when you're multitasking and overstimulated. They come when you're quiet, when your mind is still enough to let ideas rise to the surface. Silence gives your brain room to wander, to imagine, to connect dots that weren't visible before. It invites creativity to enter, not forced, just welcomed. Silence also teaches you detachment. You learn not to chase every opinion, not to explain yourself constantly, not to seek constant reassurance. You start to understand that peace is more valuable than being right, that progress is more important than being seen. You grow into yourself not as a reaction to others, but as a reflection of your own truth. You stop leaking energy into empty conversations and start preserving it for meaningful transformation. Ultimately, silence is a mirror and a weapon, a compass and a shield. It helps you hear what truly matters and ignore what doesn't. It strips away distraction and exposes your discipline. It forces you to build a relationship with yourself, because in silence, you can't hide. And yet in that vulnerability, you become stronger, more focused, more resilient, more real. Self-focus is not selfish, it's essential. In a world that constantly demands your attention, energy, and validation, turning inward becomes a revolutionary act. The more you focus on yourself, the more you begin to understand the depth of your thoughts, the roots of your behaviors, and the patterns that have been shaping your life, often without your awareness. Self-focus is not about isolation, it's about alignment. It's not about ignoring others, it's about fully meeting yourself. When you prioritize self-awareness and self-responsibility, you step into a place where true transformation can begin. Transformation doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't fall into your lap or arrive through wishful thinking. It comes through deliberate effort, through an honest audit of who you are, who you've been, and who you want to become. This kind of clarity is impossible when your attention is scattered across everyone else's opinions, timelines, and expectations. When your focus is always external, you become reactive. You're shaped by your environment instead of shaping your environment. But when you shift that focus inward, everything changes. You move from reacting to creating, from surviving to designing your life with intention. Self-focus gives you the ability to recognize your needs and your boundaries without guilt. So many people run on empty because they've never stopped long enough to ask themselves what actually fills them. They're trying to fix everything outside while ignoring the chaos within. But transformation begins the moment you become aware of what drains you, what nourishes you, and what needs to change. This awareness doesn't come from advice, it comes from presence, from paying attention to your own emotions, habits, and internal dialogue. It comes from watching yourself closely, not to judge, but to understand. As you begin to focus more on yourself, you also develop discipline. Not the kind of discipline rooted in punishment, but the kind rooted in love. The kind that says, I matter enough to show up for myself every single day. Discipline doesn't come from pressure, it comes from clarity. When you know what you want, and you understand why you want it, commitment follows. But you can't gain that clarity unless you're focused. If your attention is fragmented, your growth will be too. But when you focus deeply on yourself, your goals become sharper, your habits become stronger, and your mindset becomes more resilient. Self-focus allows you to slow down and actually process your life. Most people are too busy rushing from one task to another, from one relationship to another, without ever asking themselves what it all means. They repeat cycles because they've never examined the root cause. They relive pain because they've never fully faced it. But when you take time to be with yourself, you can begin to connect the dots. You can trace the source of your wounds and begin the process of healing. That healing doesn't come from external fixes. It comes from inner awareness, from being honest about what hurts, and from being willing to do the inner work however long it takes. Self-focus also sharpens your intuition. The more you listen to yourself, the better you get at trusting yourself. And trust is the foundation of transformation. When you truly trust yourself, you stop outsourcing your decisions, your confidence, and your worth. You stop looking for permission to be great. You stop waiting for someone to choose you. You choose yourself, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. And once you start choosing yourself consistently, your whole world begins to shift. Opportunities align, energy flows differently, and your sense of purpose becomes magnetic. This journey of transformation also requires deep patience. Real change isn't instant. It's layered, often uncomfortable, and rarely linear. There will be moments when you feel like nothing is happening, moments when you're doing the work but not seeing the results. This is where self-focus becomes your anchor. Instead of chasing short-term validation, you stay connected to your long-term vision. You keep going, not because the world claps for you, but because you've decided you are worth the effort. That inner commitment becomes unshakable when your focus stays within. Self-focus fuels growth in areas that others can't even see. You start becoming more emotionally intelligent, more grounded, more clear-headed in the face of stress. You begin to respond instead of react. You start holding space for your own emotions, rather than pushing them aside or projecting them onto others. This emotional maturity is a silent strength. It doesn't need to be proven. It's felt in the way you carry yourself, in the way you handle challenges, in the way you honor your own journey without needing to compare it to anyone else's. Another powerful effect of self-focus is detachment from external noise. When you're deeply connected to your own values and purpose, outside criticism loses its sting. You no longer shape your life around avoiding judgment or pleasing others, because you're not living for their approval. You're living for your own alignment. That kind of detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop shrinking. It means your focus is so rooted in growth that you're willing to be misunderstood in order to stay true to yourself. As your focus sharpens, you begin to notice where you've been living on autopilot. You start questioning your habits, your beliefs, your reactions. You ask, does this serve me? Is this truly what I want? Am I acting from choice or conditioning? These questions, though simple, are powerful. They act as keys, unlocking doors to deeper levels of awareness. And with each level, you gain more access to your potential. You begin to redesign your life, not based on what's familiar, but based on what's aligned. Self-focus also creates space for creativity. When your mind is no longer cluttered with distractions, doubts, and the drama of others, it becomes a fertile ground for ideas, solutions, and innovation. You start creating not for applause, but from a place of expression. You move with authenticity. You stop trying to copy others, and start building something that's uniquely your own. That originality comes from knowing who you are, what you value, and where you're going. And that knowing can only come from deep, consistent self-focus. Even in relationships, self-focus makes you stronger. It teaches you to love from wholeness, not from emptiness. It allows you to give without losing yourself, to connect without compromising your peace. You start attracting people who meet you where you are, not where you pretend to be. And when challenges arise, you're able to navigate them with grace, because you've already done the inner work. You're not expecting someone else to complete you. You've already committed to completing yourself. At its core, self-focus is a decision to stop waiting, to stop blaming, to stop numbing. It's a decision to take full ownership of your evolution, not just in the obvious ways, but in the quiet, subtle daily choices that compound over time. It's not glamorous, and it's not always comfortable, but it's worth it. Because the more you focus on yourself, the more you begin to transform from within. And that kind of transformation doesn't just change your life, it changes your energy, your presence, your path. When you choose to focus on yourself, you take control of your growth, your healing, and your direction. You begin to move with clarity, not confusion. You build a life that reflects your values, not someone else's expectations. Transformation becomes inevitable, not because of outside influence, but because of inner alignment. The more intentional you are with your energy, your time, and your thoughts, the more powerful your evolution becomes. This isn't about turning away from the world. It's about showing up in it as your most grounded, authentic self.